So, welcome to the film marketing section. Now, Pascal, this week, if it's all right with you, I'd like to talk about Bond 25, or as it's going to be known, No Time to Die. Now, I have to tell you, one of the consequences of lockdown was that me and the wife decided that we were going to watch all 24 of the existing Bond films back to back over a period of nights. In fact, I don't think we did it every single night. We've probably had one Bond film and then a night off and then another Bond film. So it took us getting on towards 2 months to get through all 24 of the films. Not 2 months, a while. I can't do the maths. It's too early in the morning. So we started with Dr. No, which I think was released back in 1962,
Correct.
Before I was born. And obviously the last one from a few years ago was Spectre. And it's just fantastic to go through. I mean, there've been some great Bond films. There've been some clunkers. I would argue that pretty much every single one of them is entertaining in some way, but obviously some absolutely stand out. And I guess I'm really excited for the launch of No Time to Die. I mean, there's been quite a gap between this one and Spectre, I think 4, nearly 5 years. There's been all sorts of controversy about changing the director and having to rewrite the script, and will Daniel Craig do another one or won't he do another one, and if he doesn't do another one, who's going to be the new James Bond? And even though he has done another one, we're still having the speculation as to who the next James Bond will be, and will it be a female? For goodness sake, I think they've got away with Doctor Who because Doctor Who isn't human, but we'll have that conversation another day. But again, coronavirus has got in the way of the marketing of Bond 25. Now, most Bond films, if I remember rightly, tend to be launched in the autumn, so they usually come out sometime mid-November to tap into the Christmas market. Funnily, this particular Bond film, No Time to Die, was scheduled to launch in April of this year. And we just started to see the teaser campaigns. So, 30-second preview, some great shots of the Aston Martin, shot of Daniel Craig abseiling down a wall somewhere, a little bit of action, a little bit of a teaser. You see the logo, the style of the film, a little bit of a hint as to who might be in it. And then, of course, COVID-19 lockdown comes along, and all of a sudden, unprecedented, of course, they delay the launch of No Time to Die back to November of this year, which ironically puts it back in its more traditional launch period. And the marketing has effectively been stopped just as the campaign was getting started. So I saw teaser trailers, I saw billboard adverts outside shops, and then there was the longer 2.5-minute trailer, which was incredibly exciting. But now, of course, everything's just gone dead. And I guess the question I'm thinking is that, it needs must, coronavirus, but is it possible to sort of stop a campaign mid execution and then effectively resurrect it at a later date? Or will they actually have to rethink the entire thing? And just to layer on top of that, I've also heard rumours that some of their audience previews weren't actually as the approval ratings weren't as high as they were expecting, and some people have been saying that they're actually reshooting some of it. Now, I don't know whether that's even possible given the lockdown, but what do you think?
Well, for me, it was interesting that you should have chosen the Bond franchise, one of the longest-running franchise in the kind of Western stroke English-speaking world, if that's the expression. Other continents have even longer franchise going. I'm thinking about the Asian market with Godzilla and a few other things. So to me, it's part of almost our culture. And back to your thing about the event, every so often is the Bond movie that almost tie you over the summer blockbusters and the Christmas movies. In between you have the Bond movie, which is still for families in general, although some of the latter one with Daniel Craig have been very, very dark and I think more complex in terms of character arc and development. But to your question about campaigns being stopped and starting again, whilst there is a context and the public will understand why it has happened, what they can't do, surely, come September, October, should we be allowed to go to the movies again with all the safety measures in place, they can't just reserve the same trailers and the same teasers. So from a work point of view, I think the marketing department, which I'd love to sometime be a fly on the wall, we're going to have to rethink their strategy, because so we're seeing that. And if you want to have a spike of excitement, to lead the audience to come to the movies, you're going to have to serve something else. But the risk is, of course, then they start to give away too much of the storyline, or they start to give away too things. So I think they may have to do something very different, maybe some audience participation things where that they've done for other films, where they give you video clips and you can edit your own version of the trailer and then release it on social media. That could be one thing they're going to do. They can maybe play a little harder on product placement. One thing about the Bond movies that is astonishing is how elegant the product placement is. No other movie franchise or other movies on their own could get away with it without the cynicism being the reaction. But here you see the laptops and the clothes and the watches and the cars and all the gizmos that then are literally sold as items around Christmas. Not that I could ever afford the James Bond watch, but and for me, I'm just looking at it, and be charmed, thinking there's no other environment where you could essentially flog Adidas shoes, because we were told, because I made the headline this year, or for this film, Bond is not wearing smart shoes, they're wearing Adidas, like the young uns out there. And so I'm thinking, are they going to lean more on that, so let the product to do some of the marketing for them? We don't know, but maybe actually people like those companies like Adidas and many others are going to say, do you know what, I think it's going to be cold, it's been 6 months, so we're going to pull out. So the risk as well for the marketing department is that their sponsors, I believe that's the term, and other kind of financiers are going to say, well, it's been 6 months, we're not sure we're going to go back to the movies. We heard that the viewing, the preview with the audience has not gone so well, so we'll pull back, the same way they're pulling back from Facebook and many other things. So I think at this moment in time, the marketing department is having big discussions, they're having a big challenge, but as an audience, I can't be reserved the same stuff that I've seen that led me to be excited. You're right, it was April, so back in February, March, you and I were already sharing each other's kind of, have you seen this one? Everything from social to even the press. So I think there's a lesson in that for all of us, which is that when a campaign has to be stopped for reasons that are outside of your control, you can't just restart as if nothing has happened. I think there is to be some reflection on that, but you've got to think about the audience as well. If your audience has already consumed that content, and 6 months later, you just, great, it's a big challenge, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do about it. But I would be disappointed if they don't really surprise us, because ultimately that's what I need as an audience.
I think you're absolutely right. It has to be something big. Now, again, recently there was a bit of a revelation. I don't know whether it was leaked or whether it was just some good investigative journalism, but there was a bit of news about a plot point from No Time to Die, which to me was actually a fairly big spoiler, a fairly big reveal. So for the sake of everybody's sanity, I'm not actually going to tell you what that piece of news is, just in case you don't know. But it's something that, as far as I can remember, has never happened to James Bond in a film. And if it is the truth, then it will be pretty big. But if they then base the marketing campaign around that particular spoiler, then by its very nature, they're going to blow part of the plot, and I don't really think they're going to want to do that. So I'm with you. I'd like to see what sort of interactive trailers we might see, what sort of product placement advancements we might see for this film. But I do know that I'm looking forward to it. I'd hope that we don't have to see it delayed again into 2021, because I really do want to get my fix of James Bond 25 before this year is out.
And back to my comment earlier about the longest running franchise, there's an enormous amount of goodwill from the audience around the world about the character that Ian Fleming invented as part of his own kind of journey as a creator and as a creative person. And so I think they can bank on that, but they shouldn't take advantage of it. They shouldn't kind of rely on the audience goodwill. Continue to do your job as storytellers and impress us and help us restart with you this the lead up to the movie release, because otherwise it could become, that lackluster kind of sentiment with the last Star Wars movie. The last Star Wars movie should have been the biggest event in cinematic history, and it wasn't. It was just yet another sci-fi movie that people kind of went, but where, I'm sure someone said, I'll wait for the DVD to come out. And I would hate for this to be what happened with Bond 25.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That Star Wars movie, it made me want to flip the switch on the gear stick, press the button and eject from the cinema.
Well, talking of eject, time is against us, Roger, and we're pretty much at the end of today's episode.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to and watching Two Geeks and a Marketing podcast. We'd be delighted if you would subscribe and leave us reviews in the usual places. Until next week, please do go out there and make sure that your marketing is done right. I was Roger Edwards and he was Pascal Fintoni.